Greg, I've, like many, wondered about the end time. We see it scientifically with a whole host of ways we can annihilate ourselves. Certainly, theologians have no dearth of possibilities talking about this.
Sure.
The end time is featured in the Judeo-Christian tradition. Certainly, it's in the New Testament significantly. How do you see the end time as part of your theology?
Well, there's the promise that the present situation that we're in, the present state of the world, this present epoch, isn't eternal. It comes to an end. It's like a chapter of a book that's going to come to an end. We don't know when. We don't know the details of how. There are plenty of people out there who say they know when and say they know how, but they don't know what they're talking about. They do damage by ranting like that, though they usually make a lot of money. We don't know when, we don't know how, but it will come to an end. And the Bible describes that as the coming of the kingdom of God, when God's going to now make right all that is wrong.
So you see that as a literal kingdom, not just something spiritual in your heart that some people have talked about.
No, as it's depicted in the New Testament, it is God bringing the kingdom to earth. It's on this earth. It's a perfect version of what there is now.
All right, so this is going to happen in the future.
I believe so, yes.
And do you have any sense, is it like in the next 100 years or the next 20 million years, or you have no idea?
If there's anything we should learn from history, is that we shouldn't try to guess at that. Throughout history, people have been, thinking that it's going to be today or next year or whatever. And there's plenty of people today who are doing that very same thing. But all that does is it sets up for people for disappointment. It sometimes gets them to do crazy things. Like there are people right now trying to block the Middle East peace process on the basis of some eschatological prophecy that they've heard of or something like that. And we should leave that to God. God will know when to wrap it up. Our job is to live every day like it's our last. Speculating about the details of these sorts of things is, I think, equivalent to trying to, go to a tarot card reader and trying to find out exactly how you're going to die. It's morbid.
Didn't Jesus talk about watching things and watching for these signs and all sorts of things?
Yeah.
You ignore all that?
No, of course I don't. There's nothing in the Bible that I ignore. I pay attention to all of it. In Matthew 24 and at several other places, Jesus talks about the sign of the times. Now, there's a lot of discussion about what that means, whether it's referring to the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, whether it's referring to the end of the world, and we can have a long discussion about that. But whatever you make of that discussion, at the end of the day, everyone's got to admit that they don't know. Wars and rumors of wars, Jesus says. Well, when hasn't there been those? There'll be earthquakes. Well, guys, there's always, earthquakes. The thrust of the teaching in the New Testament is this. We're to live with the anticipation and the expectation that the Lord is going to come back and set up his kingdom. And that could happen any time. So live every day like it's your last, and don't sweat the details.
Do you pay attention to world news in the sense of maybe this is something to do with Bible prophecy?
No. I really don't. It's so speculative that I don't see any good fruit coming of that at all. And I've read a lot of the, Hal Lindsey's and the end time prophecies, whatever, and consistently they just pull stuff out of context and get this person to fit, and then they've got to revise their teaching, year by year, depending on what's happening in world events. I really don't think that God so loved the world, he gave us a jigsaw puzzle that we could figure out what's going to happen in the last 7 years of world history. When he wants to be clear, he's clear. And so he tells us how we're to live. He tells us how his love for us and what we're supposed to be doing. And he tells us that there will be an end. And that's all we need to know. What I think is important is this. From a Christian perspective, that end is not a doomsday report. It's rather good news. It is the bringing to the world of God's love and justice and peace. And the world will finally be what the world was always supposed to be. So the end of the world, as we know it now, is not bad news from a Christian perspective. It's something we look for and hope for and pray for.
Are there signs of that? I mean, when you get into that process, would you be able to recognize it if you're in it?
Well, I think we're in the process.
You think we're in the process now?
Well, I think that the world... There's enough to know that the world can't go on forever the way it is now. Even basic science will tell you that.
No, so maybe 5 billion years or...
Conceivably, it could be. I personally don't see how we can go on for a couple more centuries the way we're going now, just in terms of our proclivity towards violence and war and other things that are going on. There's a global warming. We got a lot of problems here. And so I don't know how it could go on, but I'm not going to draw from that a conclusion that I know that it's going to be, in the next 10 years or the next 100 years or the next 1,000 years, because I don't know that. What I worry about is that when people start getting too obsessed with end times, they stop caring about the here and now. So there's plenty of people out there saying, well, look, the world's going to come to an end. Why should we care about our environment? The world's going to come to an end. Why should we try to improve society? And yet the Bible tells us that we're supposed to be stewards of the earth. We're supposed to care about the earth. We're supposed to care about society. And so I think it's good to have a knowledge that this epic of world history will come to an end, but it's not good to become obsessed with the details about how exactly it's going to come to an end. Live every day right here and right now and live it to the fullest. And that's the best we can do.